and please welcome Gareth. Gareth is the head of global clearance at UCB, and what I understand from clearance at UCB, which may be slightly different to other companies, is because I think it all goes through a central system. I don't think they do global and local review. I'm sure Gareth can explain. Now, here he is, and Gareth, you got the memo. We're twinning, love that. So,
absolutely.
Hey, it's like we prepped. So Gareth loves nothing more than MLR, but he's got a few hobbies, some sci-fi writing, some books, some films. So we'd love to hear more about what you're working on, Gareth, and how AI, you're seeing the process change in UCB. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So yeah, kind of halfway. Okay. So UCB, we centralize the MLR process, but what I mean by that is that MLR still continues in the brand teams as it would with your medical, legal, and regulatory person, but the process, the system, the governance, SOP, everything lives with me and my team. And I have people within my team called chairs or clearance leads whose job it is to sign off at a global level before it goes to local. And today, if I can make this thing work, let's see if it works. It does. I'm going to talk to you about AI and MLR specifically. I'm going to get into the results of something we actually tested to show you how it works. And then I'm going to broaden it up to a topic that's close to my heart, which I call feeding the beast. But we've talked a lot about prompting, and I'm going to take a step back from that and kind of talk about something else, which I think is really, really important that we need to consider when doing these things. So importantly, I need to acknowledge Carolina on our team. She's with IT. She is my partner in crime. We're doing all of this together. So I'm kind of like business and governance, and she's the IT person. And a bunch of these slides were also created by her. And I do dislike taking credit for other people's work. So if the slides are pretty, they were definitely done by Carolina. If they're ugly, they were done by me. So we can start with a poll was going to be the next slide. If we got that one to come up. Look at that. So, you know, I don't know who's joined after the break, who else we have on the call, but I would just like to get a general idea of who's actually even exploring AI in content approval. So you're exploring, you're already utilizing it, or you just like asking it like silly questions at the moment. Wow, we actually have a percentage asking it about woodchucks. That's great. Okay, so nearly half of people are not at all. Nearly half are exploring. I have a small percentage, not small, 13 or so percent actually doing it for AI content approval. I'd love to talk to you guys. Just jump to 16. Okay, and lots of people talking about woodchucks. That's fabulous. Okay, so with that in mind, you know, just as a kind of a background, if you're in MLR at all, you know that a whole bunch of it, the number of cycles you go through, a good 50 to 80% of it is preventable, right? We've all seen it, the quality of the content that comes in and the churn that we have. It's grammar, it's spelling, there's a missing reference, maybe there's missing safety information, you know, a logo's off. And these are all generally basic things, but the problem is that clogs up the system, right? That means you have to like send it back, someone has to edit it, you get it back again, and that's already cycle number 2. And we generally aim overall at UCB for a total of 12 days to get something through, which includes, we have a whole team of people doing pre-medical reviews. So I have a team of people looking at data, references, grammar, all that stuff before it actually ever hits what I call true MLR, so that the medics and legal people can then really focus on the strategic things and not bog themselves down with checking references. Okay, so really it's low quality of incoming materials that that we are dealing with. And it's gonna connect for me, the little remote. There it goes. Fabulous. Okay, so when we looked at what we needed from an AI tool, these were the criteria that we put into place. We need it to be scalable, so we're talking 30 plus countries. We need to be automated, high quality, obviously, consistent. So I need it to do exactly the same in Germany as it's going to do in Spain. I need it to be efficient, which sounds silly, but you know, some of these tools can get a little complicated. and it needs to be cost effective, which is something, I think Emma talked about quite a bit in terms of the finance partner. So that it really needs to be part of that. And then within that functionality, so those are kind of the broad scale things, but within the functionality itself, I need it to be able to do things that you might see in Word, Microsoft Word. So your editorial checks, guideline checks, content comparatives. So looking at approved claims or approved materials. I need it to be able to check my references automatically against the label. If I could spell label on there, would be nice. But against the indication, the PI, I need to check for trademark disclaimers, any regulatory alerts, be able to check across types of content, which is really important. And then, if possible, have a machine learning feedback loop as well. With that, we should be able to do these three things, right? So if the tool could do all those things, then we should be able to have an impact at local level, because really, the final clearance, the final MLR, almost everything, particularly commercial, happens at a local level, right? Because there are local regulations. So we should be able to implement this locally. We should be able to get as much of the review done as possible in one shot. And then hopefully, shift from reactive checks to a bit more proactive collaboration and have content that's ready to rock and roll. So we looked at originally 15 vendors. And then we, of all the things that I talked about, we kind of added some more bits and pieces in here. And then we kind of did a bit of a heat map. Now, this changes, I'll say, basically on a weekly basis, because every week, all of the vendors are improving, the AI is improving, it's moving at an incredible rate. But this is the snapshot that it was at the time. Now, I've tried to be nice and not giving the names of who we were looking at across all of these. I can say, Viva is the only game in town for a lot of content approval, but their bot for MLR is not out yet. It's due out now, I believe. So we didn't look at that one. But you can see from the heat map here, very few actually met the criteria that we kind of needed. So we broke it down to a few that we felt did the best job. And we have been evaluating those over the last few months. And I'm going to give you a snapshot of some of the results. And they weren't great, right? So, we had 29% accuracy. So I already told you, I have a team of people basically doing what we would like AI to do. So I have a team of pre-medical reviewers that do a lot of that checking. And when you compare the AI, what it was picking up compared to what the humans were picking up, they were getting less than 30% right. They were missing typos, missing referencing errors, trademark statements. It wasn't fabulous. They also misidentified things. So some things 25% were considered errors that weren't errors, and that's also a bit of a problem. And sort of totally across the thing with an F1 score around 26%, which wasn't great. And that might lead you to think, well, these AI tools aren't wonderful, and that maybe we picked the wrong one. Please connect. Little thing here. Go on. A little internet thing. There we go. But there's a huge but here. So this was my attempt at a joke, and then I think I got it wrong because it took me and Kate a while to figure out it was actually funny. But the bottom line is we talked a lot about garbage in, garbage out, right? We talked about doing your prompt wrong and getting the wrong result. But there's another huge component, which is your data foundation. Right, so we've talked about the references, giving the AI the content it needs, but then when you actually think about that, how do we as pharma in a cohesive way store those things that we need for the AI or for generative AI for content creation? Where do we put those things? And the thing is that we need to start thinking like a tech company and less like a pharma company. The content that we make needs to be structured and searchable, right? That means we need to have a very specific and consistent way of meta tagging our content, our claims, how we tag the content, making it easy to filter and retrieve, and then saved in a place that's actually accessible in a compliant way, which is harder than it sounds for those people that need to see it, or the AI to grab it. reusable and composable. So again, it's about, can the format of something be used across platforms? And machine readable. And these things are important because when we get things in from agency to review in MLR, we get some stuff through that's been built in different ways. And I'll give you an example. One of the problems that we had when we were trying to get the AI to read the content was it couldn't read the text. It couldn't do the basic review of the content because the AI tool is based on Adobe OCR, which requires the text to be available. But some of the content had been built in Photoshop using image layers, and they weren't text layers. And that immediately caused the AI to not be able to do its job. And so it wasn't the AI that was at fault. It was what we were giving it. It was our data foundation that we were giving it in the first place. And then obviously we need these components, these bits and pieces to be integrated across our channels. Is it going to all the way down to the CRM? We want those insights from the MSLs or the Salesforce, whoever it is that's using it, to be able to feed back to generate those insights. And so this is, it's my drum to bang, I'll say, when I'm talking about this in general. It's my phone keeps turning itself off for moving. There we go. So if you think about it, we talked about these things. We talked about that the AI needs, to be trained on the claims and the editorial guidelines. You need to feed it the brand guidelines. You need to give it all this information and train it well for it to be able to do its job. So when you give it the draft, it can then do its job and then review the materials. And that means, if you think about it, and we've talked about MLR, but it also, as I mentioned earlier, if you broaden it up, it affects content authoring. It affects, how we want our agencies to work, and it affects the personalization and data-driven marketing as well, and those insights. But that means across those domains, your claims, your ISI, guidelines, brand guidelines, whatever it is, country-specific regs, I need that updated all the time. I need it to be up to date. I need it to be in a place that can be accessed easily. It needs to be tagged and handled in the same way. And that requires digital asset management, librarians, and an entire system to do that well, right? Rather than just feeding it bits and pieces, because otherwise it can't do its job. And this is not the Pharma Brand's fault. This is my phone attempting to reconnect. There we go. So when I talk about feeding the beast, the AI beast is hungry. It can do its job really well. And a lot of the tools are very good at what they do. But we in pharma are a little bit behind in terms of doing this. So one of the big things that we have been really trying to get right at UCB is that data foundation. How do I make sure at a very basic level, let's just take core claims, how do I do that the core claims are doable and readable and consistent from global to local, and that includes those that are translated into other languages, and it always needs to be up to date. If the core claims library is out of date, but content is being made and then evaluated by the AI is going to get it wrong, because it's going to say, well, your claims are wrong, but they might not be. It's just the library is out of date. And so that whole workflow from global to local is so important, and that's across everything. Images that you're using, is there a contract? Is it an image of a patient, and the patient said, I can only use that image in these specific circumstances? Well, how do we manage that copyright and that digital asset? And so these foundations are really, really important, and that's kind of where we are, I would say, at UCB, at really, really trying to build those foundations. And you really have to get into the nitty gritty, right down to the number of characters you could put in a box for a core claim to make it work. So my takeaway from all of this is really build bottom up, think bottom up, because your regulation generally lives locally. That's where that final sign-off is going to be. So AI tools and MLR really have to work well locally. You've got to ensure your data foundation is robust and clean. If you don't get that right, you're building on bad foundations, and the AI can't do its job, no matter how good it is. Make sure that the content intake is good. So even the format into which you're taking content from agencies or whoever's building it needs to be consistent. There needs to be rules around it. Otherwise, it's not going to work well. And lastly, the big one for me is resource. I think it cannot be understated, the people power that it takes to make this happen. And I think there's a misnomer that AI is going to fix things and it's going to reduce workloads, etc. But the people and the subject matter expert that you need to make it happen are absolutely key. So I have left a few minutes for questions, and I'll stop there, Kate, I think.
Hi, I can help with those questions. So, we've got one around copy approval. Copy approval is an important part of SIG training, and will this be a problem when our AI is doing copy and copy approval? I guess AI proofing AI's homework.
I mean, it's, again, we've had this talk about it earlier, where the people are never going to be removed, I think, from the process in general. I think it's about getting comfortable with it and understanding the limitations of what you've asked of the AI. So in my area, what I'm working on is it's fact checking. It's doing the black and white things, but MLR is as much an art as it is a science. And sometimes it's that constellation of things at the end when the signatory is looking at it and says, hey, you know what, this doesn't look right. It's just something's off here. But they can be comfortable that if the reference has been checked, the reference is right. And that's where we want to be.
Yeah, agree. So you also talk, which was quite interesting, around different countries and different languages. Someone who has put things through review globally, and then I had a project with 42 local languages. It was fun, and getting those through review was quite fun. I feel this question: what issues do you get across borders with AI responses?
So a lot of the AI models at the moment are being done in English, at least the ones that we're global, right? So that's the vendors that we get to speak to. When you start moving to local languages, it can be a little more tricky. So we've tried in German and we've tried in Spanish, and it's okay, but it's not great. And again, we're back to training that AI. So it's a little bit about blaming the bad worker blames a tool, right? So again, it's having someone locally who is constantly training that AI on language locally, and also regs and those kinds of things.
And what is the training set up more generally now at UCB for AI training? Is it done by department? Is it done globally? I've seen people like AstraZeneca, for example, are all doing training and they all have LinkedIn badges now. What's the latest with UCB on a training point of view? Not just for MLR, but for AI in general.
For AI in general, so we're doing it within the pilots. So rather than trying to do, there's a lot of training on prompting. So that's a big one, right? And we have co-pilot, like many people within the organization. So there's lots of training kind of general, but when it comes to specific things like for medical or for these kinds of projects, then we tend to focus on champions and people that really need to understand it for the project.
What's next? What's the hardest part to solve? Two very big questions to end with.
Data foundation is the biggest, hardest thing to solve. If you don't have a good claims library, AI can't do its job. If you don't have that kind of, all the ISI documents and the labels, if it can't access it, they're not all in one place. And that means for countries too, it can't do its job. So it's really that data foundation, how you store, where you store, and who's responsible for it.
Great. Thank you so much, Gareth.